Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, coming at you live to talk about episode 5 of Star Trek Discovery, Choose Your Pain. And, oh man, this is so far the least enjoyable episode out of all of them for me. Watching this was not quite nails down a chalkboard, but pretty close. This was the least enjoyable episode so far for me to watch. I have enjoyed the first 4 episodes and then some. I have sung their praises. I have said, I've gotten Star Trek vibes, out of them. I disagreed with the appraisal of there being wooden acting, not really, believable acting or relatable characterizations and poor writing and things of that sort. I've disagreed with all of that. I've loved Star Trek Discovery from the word go. And this episode seems to me to be the cumulative embodiment of all of the non-canonista bashing I see directed at the show. I felt the acting in this was somewhat wooden and somewhat unrelatable and just not stellar, not as good as it's been in the 4 episodes previous. This episode, by and large, felt schizophrenic at best. And just, I don't know, poorly directed, poorly acted. And there were a lot of things that I just, the vibe, the feel, just didn't balance out to me. I think, the most standout moments were like Harcourt Fenton Mudd, Harry Mudd, making his appearance officially in Star Trek Discovery. That I enjoyed. I actually enjoyed that. In fact, the entire sequence of events that they kept flip-flopping back and forth between, Captain Lorca being captured and being imprisoned and finding Harry Mudd and all of that stuff, I was actually invested in. I was actually pretty intrigued with, and I was enjoying those segments. And anytime we cut back to Discovery with Saru in command and Burnham trying to bring to his attention what's happening with the tardigrade, and, just so much of that stuff, the Discovery stuff, just, it was so frustrating to watch. It was almost like, everything that happened with Harry Mudd in the episode and Lorca and all of that was the successive, progression in filming from the pilots to the 3rd and 4th episode. And then this continued it on. But all of the footage of the Discovery stuff with Burnham and Stamets and Saru and all of that felt more like that was day 1 of filming. That was the first thing they shot. And the whole sort of feel was, let's do something so uncharacteristically unlike Star Trek. You hear cursing in the dialogue in this, and now I'm not a prude. I'm not prudish. I'm not given to that. I have a pretty foul mouth myself. And if you don't believe me, I can point out, in fact, I'll link it below. There's an anime episode review I just did this past week where I lost it because the episode was nonsensical. And I was cursing up a storm. So if you want to check that out, Johnny Blues Unbridled in the language department, go ahead, check it out. I'm no stranger to foul language, to blue language. But it for me, it didn't work. The reaction from the one cat in captivity in the Klingon sort of brig that Lorca and Harry Mudd were being held in, he drops a curse, and then later on back over on the Discovery side you have Tilly saying this is so effing awesome, and then trying to rein it in, and then Stamets is there to say no, you're right, this is so effing awesome. And it just was like, what in the hell am I watching? Is this Star Trek? This is not Star Trek. They started to put that in the movies, like the TNG movies. Oh, it was so funny as the Enterprise D is crashing down on a planet and Data says, Oh, that got a chuckle out of the audience. Yeah, fine, whatever. And then First Contact, Zephyr Cochrane's partner, the lady Lily, I think was her character's name, Alfre Woodard's character, in reacting to Data being shot like by a machine gun, but then still coming at her to introduce himself. He's trying to convince her, and she says, "Oh, BS," And so they started putting that stuff in the movies. And I don't know if, I think it's arguable if they're attaining a sense of realism. If you go back to Star Trek for The Voyage Home, Captain Kirk, in explaining that particular language tack to Spock, who was not really familiar with it, he's like, well, this is the language of the day. This is what is in, the literature and everything like that. It's to get your attention. It's to get a rise out of you, to pique your interest and compel you and all this kind of stuff. Because it is not so wholly widely accepted, it's somewhat uncouth and all these kinds of things. So they put it in there to stir up a fuss, whether for better or worse, in the language. And as somebody who has read plenty of Star Trek fiction, I'm not alien to the concept of curse words flying in a Star Trek medium. It happens, but usually it's done reservedly so. And I felt like this wasn't even Star Trek fiction. This was fan fiction. This dialogue, this cutting back and forth between the characters. The whole thing with Saru going into Lorca's ready room and doing the computer cross-referencing all of the most stellar captains, and of course you see Robert April and Captain Archer and Christopher Pike, and I forget who else, one or two other names. And so it was like, oh, that's kind of cool, but it kind of felt like dick tugging, if you'll pardon my French. Trying to put something in there to be like, to try to soften the blow for what's coming later. Only it's still a gobsmacking blow when the F-bomb gets dropped, not once but twice in the manner of one scene. And it just, again, this is Star Trek. It doesn't feel right in this framework. I know this show has like a TVMA rating, and I had assumed that's the action, the gore, and everything like that. I never would have guessed it was going to be the language. And I saw Anthony Rapp. I saw in an article after watching the episode, he was saying, oh, it's kind of fun to drop the F-bomb. I was like, shut up. It didn't fit to me, The fan reaction could be, oh, it's so effing cool, but not the characters. I just don't feel like it kind of mirrors the same issues I've been having with Seth MacFarlane's The Orville. These two shows being put up against each other inadvertently by the fandom, and the very divisive fandom and everything like that, bounding each show off each other to say which is better, which is doing it better, blah, 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 which is more Star Trek and everything like that. I have said the contemporary references in the comedy in The Orville are its greatest detractor for me. The thing that chiefly ruins it time and time and time again for me. And this language, being that it was somewhat contemporary, that's how I felt. I felt like taken completely out of, it was like an out-of-body experience, an out-of-watching the episode experience as soon as I heard that language. And I'm just like, what, oh man, who approved that? It just really kind of upset the tide for me. And like I said, almost every sequence that was unfolding on the Discovery side of things in this episode felt like day one of shooting. Sonequa Martin Green, I have again nothing but superlatives to say up until this point. Her every performance in every episode previous has been attractive to me and compelling to me, and it's like I kind of feel like I'm rooting for her because it seems like she's on a redemptive path, if not professionally, at least within as a character. And here her acting just felt cardboard cutout, for lack of a better term. And it could be that maybe I'm just gauging that with the sour taste in my mouth of the foul language. I don't know, but it didn't feel convincing. Not nearly as convincing as every episode previous. As I've said already, I have sung the praises of each of those episodes. The first two, part sort of opening for this series, as well as episodes 3 and 4. Each one of them I had nothing but superlatives to say. I had nothing but praises to sing for them. And this episode, by and large, like, I'll just go through like a list from memory. I didn't write any notes or anything like that. Sometimes I do that. But I'll try to go, just having hit record after watching the episode and looking at that article. I'm going to try to remember from memory the things I liked about this episode. The things I chiefly liked were the concern for the tardigrade, the concern for the well-being of and subsequent freeing of the tardigrade, although I felt they really amped up the melodrama with the music when they were finally freeing the creature. Like this was some great epiphany moment kind of thing, and they were really playing up the heroism in the music, the score, and that felt out of place as well. I liked the sort of, not all of it, but some of the going back and forth, the interpersonal interplay between Burnham and Saru. I have chiefly speculated, and I even had a lengthy discussion with somebody else who was watching Discovery and greatly enjoying it over on my Facebook account the other day. I was saying I suspected that Saru had a grudge to sort of hold over Burnham, bone to pick with her. And I had speculated that could have even extended to why Burnham is seen as a mutineer, as a sort of, criminal who started this war. Maybe that was something that was brought about because, the captain's logs and all that kind of stuff, all the ships that were destroyed, there were only so many survivors who could have accounted for what happened. And Saru not being happy with it, as I've heard, I have yet to pick it up, but the, tie-in novel that's a prequel to Star Trek Discovery, taking place on the Shenzhou with Burnham and the dynamic between Burnham and Saru being very much aggressive, because as he says in this episode, he reveals it very much on the nose, answering to my speculation that he had that grudge with her because she was promoted to the first officer under Captain Georgiou. And I had speculated that part of that might have been why, in the debriefing that followed to command, Starfleet Command and otherwise, Saru might have painted Burnham in a much more negative light, and an irresponsibility and the reasoning for, attacking, as he might have put it, the Klingon warrior, that started everything, instigated everything. Subsequently, being mutinous against her captain, subsequently dragging her captain, as he might have put it, from his perspective, over to the Klingon vessel to get to Kuvma, and losing the captain. I mean, he could have very much, chosen his words so as to reflect on her poorly, which is why she is so poorly considered, why she has this negative, reputation. And so it kind of annoyed me that, he was put into command and he was uncertain, and they could have really made this, sort of under an examination sort of, prism, something very similar to putting Spock in command in the original series, where the rest of the crew, because he had that cold logical faculty, he wasn't necessarily, making the same kinds of decisions that Captain Kirk might have. So there was conflict there, and they didn't know if they could trust Spock. And it was more so just Saru's own self-reflection and being unsure of himself, and just some of that banter that was going on back and forth between Burnham and Saru. It felt highly melodramatic again, and I felt like it was too on the nose. There was even a point where it's like he breaks the fourth wall. he wants to hear what the computer's appraisal of his actions were as compared to the other captains that they mentioned at the start of the episode. And then he turns it off without listening to it. And he looks very pointedly at the camera and he's like, I know what I've done. Well, good for you. Why are you telling us? There was nothing understated about it. Everything was on the nose, including the language. So, like, that was pretty much all I got out of the Discovery sequences in this episode. I found that much more entertainment was being gotten out of the sequences with Lorca on the Klingon D7. They said it was, didn't look like a D7 to me, being the Trekkie that I am. And then they said like bird of prey too. Am I incorrect? Are those not two separate designations? There's the D7 and then there's the bird of prey. Those are two different kinds of Klingon vessel. That is the case, is it not? Correct me in the comments below if I have that wrong. But apparently they're both the same thing in this show. And but the whole aspect of choosing your pain. The Klingons come in and they're beating the hell out of somebody, so they keep their prisoners from forming any bonds or anything like that, as Harry Mudd describes it. And he was eavesdropping, working for the Klingons in a sense. He's always the opportunist, and that was a very natural aspect of his character. The cat who played him was exceedingly acceptable. Like his first line when Lorca's like choking him or whatever. He's like, oh, and I reiterate, ow. I laughed out loud at that. I was like, okay, this is Harry Mudd. I had no problem swallowing that this was Harry Mudd. Especially his declaration at the end. This is not the last you've seen of Harcourt Fenton Mudd. And I have, based on the previews we saw before the series actually began airing, there is other footage that we've seen of Harry Mudd. So I'm actually looking forward to him coming back in. I felt like his appearance and what was going on with Lorca was the most Star Trek vibe aspect I was getting from the episode. And I don't remember the cat's name, but, he's somebody whose name has been appearing in the credits ever since day one. And he's supposed to be like, one of the main cast. And he's the guy that Lorca subsequently figures out, oh, he's in the cell with them. And apparently he was L'Rell's love slave. Oh, and that's another thing. How the hell did Voq and L'Rell get a D7? Like, that was really weird. We start the episode off, and Lorca's in the meeting with the Admiral he was talking to via holographic message in the last episode. And some time has passed to the point where the events of the last episode, there's been 2 or 3 more excursions that the Discovery has been on that we haven't seen. So they skipped ahead some time, and that was kind of disappointing to me as well. But apparently enough time has passed that the Klingons are aware of the Discovery, are aware of its components and its the nature of it. They don't know how it works, what makes it tick, but they know that it's like a ghost. And I think that's hilarious, by the way. This is something that occurred to me ever since the first time we saw Discovery using these spore drive maneuvers. It's kind of like a ghost, and it's kind of funny that I know the actor who plays, Lorca, Jason Isaacs, from the movie The Patriot, where Mel Gibson played a ghost of sorts. I just thought that was a funny parallel, but, I digress. So some time has passed, and similarly so in the previous episode, there was this sort of strangeness of the fact that 6 months had gone by and Voq and all the survivors of Takuma's house had been stationary in the wreckage of the binary stars, whatever, as well as the Shenzhou was still there. And so how did so much time pass and they're still there? They're still dead-legged, in space. All the Klingon houses left. Nobody came back looking for them. At least not right away. Whatever. So we jump ahead again. We skip ahead again. And we find that L'Rell and presumably Voq, we didn't see Voq at all in this episode, but she is pretty commandeering, and she's been using this to get back to the guy, the new character who is now going to be one of the main Discovery crewmates under Lorca. You know, she's been using him as, like, I guess, a sex slave, is the impression. I guess, maybe. And I started to wonder, I gotta be honest, is this character not perchance a spy? Is he not perchance a Klingon spy and altered to look human, or to look smooth-skulled Klingon, you know, without wanting to sound archaic, but the ethnicity of the actor gives him a natural complexion that matches the way the Klingons were made to look in the original series. Darkened skin tone, the facial hair and everything like that. As soon as he showed up, and he was, you know, spouting off about how long he'd been there, and he's kind of the concubine of, you know, the commanding Klingon lady. That was L'Rell, right? But in any case, it seemed like, you know, much as Lorca's impressions were, I got the vibe, the gist that not everything he was saying was quite adding up. And I started to think, if this isn't Volk himself, having been surgically altered to look smooth-headed Klingon a la human, then maybe it's another Klingon operative. Because L'Rell, or whoever that Klingon woman was, when they're torturing Lorca, does profess to knowing English because she is a part of a lineage of spies. The progeny of, you know, whatever, of spies. And so that seemed to raise the flag to me, you know, to make this that much more compelling would be to, you know, number one, insinuate a spy into the ranks of Discovery, who might be a Klingon. But then that much further to harken back to the original series where the Klingons were all smooth-headed. A thing that was highly explained in Star Trek Enterprise 4th season 2-parter. As to why the Klingons looked so different, you know, from the original series to the modern series with the ridges and the films and everything. So I thought, you know, that would kind of be like killing two birds with one stone. Make the story that much more compelling and then give it a more direct tie to TOS. By having this be a Klingon spy who looked human, who looked smooth-headed. And I could be way off. That's just my speculation. I could be completely wrong. But that would be gobsmacking if that were the case. And so, like, that's really all I got for you on this episode. This was the most disappointing, most unentertaining episode out of the 5 of them that have aired. All the rest of them were stellar, were spectacular. I didn't even, like, I felt a little bit of the rapport that's supposed to be there between Stamets and the Doctor. I liked their trying to put a stop on Saru's order to you know, force the tardigrade into action. I did like somewhat Stamets' own taking the risk with his body. I was getting Quantum Leap vibes. Sam Beckett vibes from him, where he puts the DNA strand in himself and he connects himself to it, and he's the one who subsequently activates the spore drive to get them the hell out of there once they've rescued Lorca in those weird looking, like, glass peacock ships that they were escaping. What they call them, like raiders or something? I don't remember what they called the ships, but they looked like something out of the 1980s Supergirl movie. Just really crappy in design. And but I liked that. I kind of liked the end scene between Stamets and the Doctor, because they've been playing it so that you're not sure, are they already a couple or not? Like, is that something that will develop over time, or were they already an established couple? And we see here that they are very much game-faced. They are very much their jobs, their occupations when they are on duty. There is no hint or whisper of there being a relationship between them. And I find that respectable and compelling. And I'd actually like to get to know more of them in their off time, because I really liked, you know, the compassion that was coming from the Doctor, saying, you know, you may not care about yourself, but you have someone you're looking at right here who does care for you. And then they ruin that, that whole sequence with the little bit of The Shining that they decided to pepper in at the end. With because now that he's got the DNA in him and everything, he walks away from the mirror, but there's the still dumb, oafish, grin-faced, like, non-linear duplicate still standing looking in the mirror. So what does that mean? There's two of them now? Is this a bridge to the mirror universe? Are they going to try to, disseminate, describe, explain the mirror universe as having been something that was born out of the spore drive or something like that? Like it's spun off into its own universe and things are evil there, but then we can see them in the mirror, oh, spooky. I don't know. Not the greatest episode. Did not enjoy it nearly as much as I wish I would have, as much as I had all 4 previous episodes. Everything to do with Harry Mudd and Lorca on the Klingon vessel was spectacular. I suspect the guy is a spy that they just brought back to Discovery, but I do not know for sure. And a few moments of what took place on Discovery were okay, at best. Sucks. It sucks to have to be so just disparaging about this episode. But I gotta call it as I see it. I gotta be honest. I gotta be truthful. And this truthfully was the least enjoyable episode out of them all for me. Love to hear from you guys in the comments below. If you've been watching Discovery, if you've been enjoying it, what you've thought of it, love it or hate it, anything goes in the comments below. Feel free to rip this one a new a-hole if you so desire. Feel free to tell me I'm crazy and I'm, completely out of my gourd and it was the best episode yet and whatever like that. As long as we have a great conversation and we're respectable about it, it's all about the topic of talk. So yeah, otherwise it'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.